know we said this back in the fall, but that's been a while back. As crazy as the year's been, on behalf of all of us on the board, director, we do appreciate what you guys do. We know it's not easy, but thank you. Next, we have Ms. Islander with the LCDAs.
Hi there. First of all, I'd like to congratulate again the teachers that got tenure. That's great, especially in this day and age. And also like to thank the board for the bonus money that you approved. And I just wanted to share something with you as we approach the testing season, because as you all know, we've now started testing. And while the tests are very, very important, extremely important, they in no way tell you all of the wonderful things that are happening in the schools. There's not a measure that you can use to show the wonderful things that are happening in each of the schools in Overton County. And I wanted to share this as a letter that was actually written by some teachers in Australia to their students about their standardized test. And they said, this test does not assess all of what makes each of you exceptional and unique. The people who score these tests don't know that some of you love to sing, are good at drawing, or can teach others how to use a computer program. They've not seen the way that some of you can dance with grace or speak confidently to a large group. They don't know that your friends count on you to be there for them when they're sad. They don't know that you participate in sports, help your mom and dad, or play with your little brother or sisters or cousins. They don't know that you are caring, thoughtful, and that every day you do your best, because these attributes cannot be tested. So I just wanted you to keep in mind that as important as these tests are, there are so many important attributes of our kids and our teachers and our schools that the tests can't measure. So just to keep everything in perspective. Thank you. Have a good night.
Does anybody else have anything for the meeting? Or wait till? Okay. With that said, if nobody has anything else, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Rick Dodson. Is there a second? Second by Dolphus Dow. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Yes, you're correct. So, does anybody need to take a break before we go into our work session? All right. First item on our work session, we have special recognition of Jackson Klaus, which is son of David and Jennifer Klaus, and Emery Klaus, which is son of James and Laura Klaus. Both these students are at Allen's Elementary in Miss Kristen Lee's class. Dr. Holman, would you explain?
I'd like to just say a little bit about this. I've talked to a lot of the teachers in the county, and I've asked for some examples of some good academic activities that have been taking place, especially in the area of writing, but it doesn't have to be necessarily in that area. And Christy Lee mentioned to me about an activity that she had, and this took place in her RTI class. This was an enrichment RTI class, and her students actually helped to develop this activity. They wanted to do something in pairs, and they wanted to do a writing assignment where they competed against each other. So Miss Lee, the way I took it, Miss Lee just let those kids just keep on and on making the criteria for this activity, which when you can allow the students to do things like that, that brings in buy-in. So those kids were helping to make the assignments harder and harder on themselves, you know. Anyway, these students, as he just said, Jackson Klaus and Emery Klaus, they work together. Come on up, yeah, we'd love for you to come on in. They work together on a writing assignment. And they have a copy of that for each one of the board members. And if you two could come up here for just 1 minute, please. I would like to say that, on behalf of Frank and Beth Walters at the Dairy Queen, we have something we'd like to present to you. It's for an ice cream cake. And what I'd really like for you to know is how much we appreciate you going above and beyond and working hard, and we hope that you'll continue to do so. Keep setting the right example for others, okay? We sure
Ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Scream. I'm probably ready. 1, 2, 3.
And I know everybody's not seen this, so I look at the outside of it. Miss Reader, listen to this real quick. Miss Reader, do you care to listen to this real quick?
They were just waiting on me at the softball field, it's
No
okay.
problem.
They just want me to clean that
I
up.
know you probably haven't read this, but after I looked at the cover of this, I flipped to the front page.
Oh, no.
Yes, I flipped to the front page. And the title is Mole Man by Jackson and Emery Klaus. And in parentheses, it says, not married. They are related, but they're not married. So it's gonna be good, I know it.
I always tell our teachers that details matter. This is a very detailed student.
Very
We
good.
appreciate that.
Very good. Next, we have David Pig to recognize.
Yes. Everyone, David Teague, if you could please come forward for just a minute. I may embarrass you just a little bit because nobody likes to be bragged on in public. But I guess that's what I'm gonna do. Everyone, during the recent snow and ice storms that we had 2 schools that had a lot of limbs down and trees down all over their campus. And we were going to we take bids and so forth to have the campuses cleaned up. But before we could do that, David Pig cleaned everything up at Hillham on his own. So I think that is the type of behavior that needs to be mentioned, needs to be bragged on. Any teacher, any employee that goes above and beyond like that, we cannot thank you enough. And I did a little research today, David, on you a little bit. Am I right?
That's good.
You've been at Hillham, am I right? You've been at Hillham since 1987?
Yes.
And I was wondering, have you worked there the whole time at Hillham?
Yes.
Well, I had never really met him until the other day, but I had heard, I've worked with, of course, the principals all these years, and I've heard Miss Dillon talk about David Pig this, David Pig that, and it was always something good. And then when this came up, I thought, we need to recognize him. So I'd just like to tell you how much we appreciate all you do, and thank you for setting the right example.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you all.
I told Levi he had to wear a tie, cup, and
He said,
all.
I only have one nice shirt.
That's what he said.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Next on the work session is the file, guys. I think we are up to the possibility of 19. We have 19, is that correct, Dr. Owens?
believe that's right.
All right, the most up to date we have now is 17. So,
11 certified, 6 non-certified.
11 certified.
If we do want to proceed with the buyout, would we want to keep the parameters the same as what they was during the last buyout? As far as financially. And the next question would be to structure this for down the road. We set it for every 5 years? Or if we're gonna try to structure this the same from here on out.
Well, I'd like to see some kind of structure, because like I said before, it's, hey, we're gonna offer it this year, and you may have some employees that may not be eligible to retire until next year or 2 years down the road, and, you know, when it gets 2 years down the road, they're gonna go ahead and retire, but we paid some 10,000 retire, and we're not offering the year they get to retire, so, you know, if we have a structure that we're gonna do it every 5, then at least everybody knows that, hey, I'm in this window, you know, I either go early or I wait 2 or 3 more years to go during, if they wanna do that. I think the structure is better than just shooting from the hip.
Obviously, I've never been through this process before, but I have some reservations about the buyout. And before I can consent to a buyout, I wanna see some kind of a feasibility document which says that the school system is gonna be better off with the buyout as opposed to not having a buyout. I know teachers, we're losing teachers to other counties because the pay scale in Overton County is not as good as it is in other counties. And so my concern is, are we paying people to leave early when we actually need those people in the school system? And so I do have some reservations about it, and maybe I need to meet with Donnie and look at an Excel spreadsheet of the pros and the cons. But at this point, I do have a reservation about it.
I think as of right now, with the numbers, if everyone on that list left, I think the cost would be around $110,000. Now, as far as the savings, it depends on which has to be filled back and which doesn't.
How many of
The
those
110 would just be,
Sorry.
absorbed?
Right now, the ones that retired,
How many?
so the 110 would just be certified, right? And the 10,000 each
Well, no,
certified.
go back
No,
to year,
it
go
depends
year.
on their
Degree.
What we did the last time in 2017, if they had a DS, it was $8,000. If they had a master's, 9,000, EDS, 10,000. And while we're talking,
So the total for all 17 is around 110.
yes.
Non-certified is $100 a year.
But that is a thing that I think we need to consider too, is if we can't absorb any of these positions, and it's not gonna give us any savings, then we're just paying somebody to go away and then turn around and have to hire a new person.
And you're correct. So depending on which employees actually take a buyout, which actually leave, depends on how much the savings would be. So right now, until we actually get a definite, I'm going to leave, I'm going to be retiring, we will have a definite dollar amount for savings. Now, if 10 out of those 17 retire, more than likely, this will pay for itself next year. So,
Cause I'm not sure, I think the last time we done a buyout is because there was enough teachers that positions we could absorb that the savings offset.
And again, it's the key positions. Are you losing key positions that you were gonna have trouble filling back again with a newer teacher, lesser paid teacher? And can you target areas that you can transition from areas where maybe you're overstaffed to somewhere that you could IT department, which is one of the things that I've encouraged us to try to take a look at. You know, is there some way or another we could transition one of those staff members to the IT department with the buyout? So I'm not opposed to it, I just have reservations until I can see it on an Excel spreadsheet. I'm gonna have trouble accepting that it's in the best interest of the school system.
Sure. How about this? The list of possibility names, if Dr. Holman could, put that salary amount that would be saved from each of those, and then we would get into the, possibility of filling those positions which can be absorbed. So, I guess we could do that on a spreadsheet, send out everybody that information, and then actually vote on it at the next meeting.
My only concern is, do they have to report to the state by a certain date if they're gonna retire?
That's what we talked about earlier.
I know they have to report, I think it's 90 days before they retire. But it takes 90 days for that paperwork to be, before they can start drawing, you know.
So
before they-
if we vote, our next meeting's May 11th, so if we vote on it then, June, July, August, I mean, they're starting the next school year before. I mean, would that put them in a predicament or not?
It would just depend on
Most
their
teachers,
their personal.
if it's the teachers, they're paid for,
Yeah, they get paid
They get
divide for the
three checks
12
in
months.
June, which will hold
So
them
they
over
would
through
still get-
September anyway.
Yes.
So if it's 90 days and it goes into August, so they'd be fine, because they
That's how
normally
they
don't get a
budget.
check until September anyway.
Yeah.
I just didn't want it to put them out to a point where it's too late and if it's 90 days, I'm good with it.
Sure. No, that's my understanding.
And sometimes it's a little faster, just depends how busy the state is and how much they're working.
And you'd mentioned, how many of these we can absorb. I don't want it to appear that I was avoiding your question. I have spent a lot of time on trying to figure out, if this person goes, then how many teachers are there at that school? And then are there teachers at that school that could be absorbed? And I've been doing a whole lot of that. But as soon as I feel like as soon as I get it almost figured out, there'll be something change. You know, there's a change that comes up. And then there's another factor that we're having to look at is, projected student enrollment, you know. So like for instance, I'll give you a for instance, like we could talk about the middle school. Their 8th grade going out could be a big class, and then the 4th grade that's coming up into 5th grade could be a small class, you know. There could be little things like that happen that would change the number of teachers that are needed. You know? So, what?
Compatibility.
yeah, and the comparability of it.
Comparability.
Because we've got to spend the same amount per student.
Right. But I didn't want it to appear that I was avoiding your question. It's just, I've spent a whole lot of time on that. It's just that I still don't have good answers for me or who we want. You know?
Oh, I know.
So if that's acceptable, we will, try to have that information. That way it'll be either emailed out or sent out in the packet, for your review. And, I mean, without just coming over and sitting down with Dr. Holman and going over that, that's the only way I know to do it. So, is everybody acceptable with that? Good. So we will put that on the agenda and, for next month, that information will be sent and, the information on the, financial, actually, what the, dollar amount is.
Dollar amount.
And, we want to, we'll put the parameters on it, 5 year, 7 year, what projection?
I'd
Of course,
say
all of it
5.
depends on budget as well, you know.
We just have to put in for budget, depending on budget.
That's correct.
But we do need to set something, like you said, stable.
I'd say 5 years pending budget, because if you got somebody that can't do it for 2 years afterwards and they know that, hey, I'm gonna retire 2 years and miss out and go 3 years early, or I'm gonna stay 3 years longer to get the buyout, if it's there, and it may not even be there, but at least there's some consistency that we sit down and review that from time to time versus we're doing it 3 years in a row, but we're not doing it for 3 or 4.
And I think that it should probably be reviewed every 5 years to do that, because if we put that we're gonna do it exactly every 5 years, if there comes a time where we don't need to have the buyout, then we open ourselves if we say we're gonna do it every 5 years to.
Could that be
possibility.
incorporated in the 5-year strategic plan?
Yes.
As a, one of our goals?
That's a long time.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if we sit here and say we're gonna absorb 3 positions next year to pay for it, then year 2 down the road, we end up hiring those 3 back. I mean, it's just lost. I mean, we're back to where we were.
Right.
If you say 5, I mean, I ain't against whatever, but if you say 5 years, you may have more next week come on, talking that.
That's way too much, looks to me like. You gotta teach 30, so that way you're gonna have to go 35 if you don't do it then.
But if they're at 30 now, they could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they can
And
retire.
29,
They can retire
if
any
they
time.
have 29,
It's just a
they
matter of
have
the
to
buyout.
wait 5 more years before they can do it.
And here's the thing too, I mean, they may sit back there and say, I'm gonna work to year 33, cause that's the year that we're gonna do it, but we may sit here and say, we can't afford it. And they've worked 3 extra years, but we're not offering a buyout anyway, cause there's nothing guaranteed.
Yeah, that's true. I think we're upset, but I think 5 years maybe is a little too much space.
Well, the buyout should be beneficial for both parties, both the school system and for the person that is retiring. Obviously, the person retiring is getting the bonus, but it should be beneficial for the school system. And I think that every 5 years is, if we could at least start with it every 5-year plan, and if we see later on that it needs to be done sooner, then it can be modified.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that, like, to Mitch's point, if we put it in that 5-year plan, then it's a continued working document, it's top of mind all the time, so.
Okay.
Can I mention?
Sure.
Another thing that I think that you all might wanna, consider is, are we want to stick with the minimum of 15 years of service? And so if someone doesn't have 15 years of service, they're not.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's.
I just thought that would be something that should be mentioned.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
I got 2 things. So, real quick, when I met with, John, Randy, Don, Dr. Holman last week, we kinda talked about the football field process, so, just correct me if I'm wrong, now that we've got the contract approved with, Don and his company, Randy and his company, so the next portion is those guys are gonna meet with John probably in Knoxville to sit down, lay everything out for us, figure out what survey work he needs done. Hopefully, May, mid-June at the latest, we'll come back and have a preliminary plan on what we'll approve and go forward. One thing we discussed, and keep in mind that when we initially did that 4.3 million, that was 2018. So that was 2 years ago. So the price of everything's went up. So what's gonna happen is they're gonna come back and they're gonna do all this work and they're gonna give us a number of what it'll be. Now that number may be over 4.3. So if it is, at that point, that's where we need to start figuring out and saying, hey, do we wanna cut the capacity down on the home visitor? What do we need to do to work within those parameters? I mean, whatever we decide as a board, they'll do. I mean, we give them that guideline, but, I just want everybody to be up front when they come back with those numbers, that it's probably not gonna look like the same as it did 2 years ago, that we may have to do some adjusting and go from there, okay? Then the second thing is, I know Dr. Holman and I talked about the softball field. I talked to them during one ball game. They're gonna build a backstop, and they've got somebody to dig their footer, and T-Cat's gonna lay the block, and they'd asked if we might be able to help them with the footer and the block, and they were looking at a net. And I talked to Dr. Holman about it. He got some things from, I think, Ms. Reader, some dollar amounts, and I think it's around $4,800. And I told him, and it's up to the board, but we give every club, sports team, whatever, $1,000 every year. We spent $3,700 on heat for the baseball. So I think it'd be fair if we gave them $3,700, or bought their block and paid for the footer, one of the two, then they could do the net on their own. So I mean, that's something, you know, we could look at if we can put on next month, and maybe try to help them out a little bit, and since we've helped baseball with their heat back there, so.
How much did you say, 37, right?
Yeah, I think the total was 48, or 47 or 48, and I just said, hey, we give every facility $1,000 every year anyway. You take that 1,000 off, we pay 37 for baseball, we'll give 37 for softball. They both got $3,700 worth of something this year, to help them out a little bit.
Anybody got anything else? Bruce, you got anything? No. Rick, you got anything? William? Okay, work session to an end. Thank you. And whoever hasn't filled out their evaluations, please get those to Heather.
We're gonna go home and read more, man.
Yeah, Rick Bowman tonight.
All right, thank you.